Hello again. In my last video, we talked about Naïve RAG and how that technique started showing a lot of promises regarding like how businesses can actually maximize on the productivity boost and all the benefits that come with LLMs, because now these LLMs have access to your internal data or your real-time data, because as we know, LLMs are trained with cutoffs in the past. So RAG comes in to actually solve for the problem of real-time data and also private data if you don't want to share with anybody else. Of course, that depends on if you're hosting your own LLMs or you're using something hosted somewhere else. Today, and I encourage you, if you didn't check the Naïve RAG one, I would do before playing this video. Now, today we're going to talk about the next advancement in this technique, which is Advanced RAG. And it focuses a lot on the idea that the main core component of RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, is the idea of retrieval. So how can we optimize retrieval in all its phases so we can get the most benefit out of LLMs and making sure that it's not utilizing a lot of resources for waste. So we know right now from research that LLMs can be fed a lot of context. Some large language models right now, they're handling 1 million tokens. So you can throw at it books and start asking questions. But we know also that the focus of an LLM on the context that you throw at it or you insert into your prompt, LLMs focus on certain areas. It could be at the beginning, at the end, the middle sometimes misses a lot of the data. The LLM misses a lot of the important information. So it's best for us to have optimized context that is enough for the LLM to give us the answer that we want. And this is where Advanced RAG gives us that benefit. Advanced RAG is gonna break down retrieval into pre-retrieval, retrieval, and post-retrieval. And the idea of those stages is for us to optimize the context that we provide with the prompt so the LLM can give us the best results. And we're gonna see it together right now from architecture perspective. So as we know, we have the basic components, which is prompt right here, the LLM right here, and the inference or the answer response that we receive from the LLM. And with Naïve RAG, we have a certain data source that once we pull the data from, the prompt is going to be enhanced and augmented with it. And this is like where augmentation is mentioned in RAG from Retrieval-Augmented Generation. And then the response comes back. So in the idea of Advanced RAG, instead of just once asking the question, what happened to character A in chapter 3, what happens in Advanced RAG is a couple of phases. Some of them are part of the system itself, some of them happens before. The first phase that happens is pre-retrieval. The idea of pre-retrieval is two things. One is for us to make sure that we already have or we already done all of the steps needed for us to clean up our data, make sure we only leave what's factual and what serves our business case in our data source. So again, in the example of a book, what you can do is actually make sure that I only have the most important pieces that I know my user is going to be asking about regarding this book. If there is something outdated, remove it. Maybe fact check everything. So in other words, make sure that your data source is optimized as possible. The other pre-retrieval piece, once the prompt comes in, so let's say for the same question that we talked about, which is what happened to character A in chapter 3, what we can do is actually make sure that we optimize this query as much as possible to something that we know is going to get us the best results out of the data source. So for example, again, if we say what happened to character A in chapter 3, we can say what happened to the name of the character A in chapter 3, the name of the chapter. So that will actually help us get better data from the data source once we retrieve the data. Now, the next phase is the retrieval itself. And the retrieval itself, what happens is that, as we mentioned, that the mechanisms that you search your data source could be of different different types. It could be like a full text search. It could be just calling an API. But in most cases, we use a vector database to utilize a vector search to search for the data that we look for, especially in unstructured data. So if I have a PDF of a book as a data source, the best way for me to get the meaning, the semantic meaning of what I have in this book is for me to actually put it in a vector database where I can apply a vector search. And to do a vector search, we have to use an embedding model. So in the retrieval phase, one of the things that we can tweak is what type of embedding model we can use. There's ones that has a lot of dimensions and it can catch a lot of the semantic meaning and it's very powerful, but it could be not as performant as ones that are much quicker to return results, but maybe they're not the highest quality. And that's a decision that your business case is gonna dictate. If your business case that I need it to be very performant, but at the same time, the semantic meaning, as long as I get the results that I want, I'm not really worried about the quality of the semantic meaning. Or I want it to be really, really performant regarding semantic meaning of the context that I'm getting from my data source, and I'm not worried about the performance or the speed. That's a balance that your business case is going to dictate, and then it's an engineering choice of which one to go for. So on the retrieval phase, these are some of the choices that needs to be taken in an advanced RAG. And then after the retrieval happens through that embedding model, so in other words, just to break it down, the prompt comes in and the question is what happened to character A in chapter 3? This is turned into an embedding using an embedding model. And then that embedding for this question is queried into the data source, which is also supposed to be a vector database of some kind of embeddings. And then that similarity that comes between them, that similarity search that happens, gives us back results. So the retrieval happened. Now what do? We have to do a post-retrieval phase right here. And that post-retrieval phase, this is where more of the magic happens. So in other words, right now, what the retrieval is going to come up with is maybe 4, 5 chunks, 10 chunks, depending on your choice. The database is going to come back saying like, here's 10 results that we think it's similar to your question. And now in post retrieval, what happens is more of this optimization that makes sure that you get the best results. So in post retrieval, what we do is two things. We try to compress these results, and meaning compress is to make sure that it's as relevant as possible to the prompt or the question that's being asked about. And the second thing is a re-rank to all these results, because those 10 results that could come from the database could have a lot of similarity and the score is very high. But now I need to actually make sure that I only take the first one or two that are most relevant to my prompt. And what that does, as we mentioned in the beginning, is that now you have such optimized context that once it's passed and augmented, it augments your prompt. Now your LLM has such specific information, it's going to give you very, very concise answers. So just to review, it's pre-retrieval, making sure everything in your data is compressed, anything that is irrelative removed, anything outdated to make sure it's dated properly if needed, or outdated and it's not needed removed. Make sure everything is factual. Now your data source is ready, embeddings in place, ready for any vector search to be or similarity search to be applied to it. Once the retrieval happens, now it's your choice of an embedding model. Now, note that whatever dimensions you use for the embedding model that you use for retrieval, it needs to be also compatible with whatever the embedding model that was used to index your database. So that's important. And then your choice of embedding model, again, whether it's if you want it performant, you want it like really good at semantic meaning and catching the context, And then post-retrieval is, again, optimizing your queries, optimizing your results again to re-rank and make sure that you have the most relative information that your prompt is going to be augmented with before going to your LLM. And that's Advanced RAG. Thank you.
For Robbie Innovations.